Hey VC, how's it going? Hope you're having a good week. So this is going to be my contest entry for Omaha Introvert's 500 subs contest. Hannah, congratulations. You very quickly got 500 subs, which is really cool. I really like your channel, and I'm just going to get into these. So it's 4 questions plus a bonus 5th one. I'm going to do all 5. First one's really easy. It's just my name. My name's Brendan. Don't really care to say my last name. I mean, a few of you have friended me on Facebook, so you guys know, but other than that, I don't really see the point in putting my name out there. If you really want to know, you can find me on Facebook. It's out there, and I think it's also on my Instagram, if you care to know. But I'm Brendan. I'm from DFW, Texas, which I realize I say the acronym DFW all the time. I never really explain. It just means Dallas-Fort Worth, which is what everyone around here calls it. More specifically, I'm more on the Fort Worth side of things in Tarrant County. It's all just kind of the same city, really. I mean, there's barely any border between the two, and you also kind of lump in Denton into that same mix. And we're also not far from I don't know, the rest of Texas. I guess we're in a good spot here. Anyway, yeah, that's where I am. Number 2, I think, was the best sounding record in my collection. This one was a little tough. I went for a modern pressing of something, or of a modern record. I picked Random Access Memories by Daft Punk. This one is 2013. I know it was mastered by Bob Ludwig at his studio. It's on a major label, you know, Columbia, Sony Music. And Daft Punk is well known for being really electronic, but this one is honestly more of like a 70s throwback, and in terms of not so much that they've sampled a bunch of 70s stuff, which they do tend to do that. They like to sample like a lot of disco stuff and dance tracks and things like that, but just like kind of the vibe they're going for, which you can even see the reproduction 70s Columbia labels here, which is a very nice touch, I think. But the kind of vibe they were going for was the 70s. Well, I guess there's always a touch of disco in there, but just like pop in general, dance music, music that people would want to dance to. And it's a super fun record, and definitely one of my favorites of that year, if not my very favorite of that year, 2013. I know Get Lucky was all over the radio, so if you know any tracks on this album, it's Get Lucky. I think that was featuring Pharrell Williams. Lose Yourself to Dance, also featuring him. Instant Crust featuring Julian Casablancas from The Strokes. I think it's a really fantastic track. Got lots of instrumentals on here. Touch is featuring Paul Williams, who wrote a lot of great music in the 70s. Giorgio by Moroder. It features a spoken word intro by Giorgio Moroder. Doing It Right is really great. That one's on the more electronic side, but that one is really great, and it features Panda Bear. And Contact closes out the album in kind of a 70s psychedelic kind of way. Really fantastic sounding record, though. Nice heavyweight vinyl, 180 gram, and all that stuff, which I know that doesn't really affect sound quality, but it's still nice, you know. Good packaging is always something I look for in vinyl releases. So the next question is my least favorite musical decade or era. This was kind of a tough question, but honestly, I think I have to go with the 2000s, whatever the previous decade was, from the year 2000 to 2009. I mean, I know that's when I grew up, and I know you're kind of supposed to like the music from the decade you grew up in, but looking back on it, I mean, a lot of it I was a fan of at the time, and I can probably pick out a couple albums here and there that I still like and I find enjoyable, but overall, the majority of stuff I don't really find myself returning to. There's, like I said, notable exceptions, but the majority of stuff I can't really get into. I mean, I know there's great music in every decade if you're willing to kind of dig for it and keep an open ear and listen to stuff that is maybe not as popular and not as well known, but I find myself finding more luck in other decades, including the one we're currently in. Maybe it's just that we have the internet now, and you can, or we really have the internet now, and you can really find all kinds of music if you just, it's not even that hard to look. You just kind of, you know, go off the beaten path like just a few feet, and you can find some really great music. Or even just like indie labels, pretty much. Okay, I guess I'll keep this just talking about the major labels. Major label releases from the 2000s I'm not too fond of, whereas I find a lot of major label stuff nowadays enjoyable in a lot of ways, and I find stuff from the 90s enjoyable, 80s, 70s, 60s obviously, and so on. But then if you go far backwards enough, I find myself liking less and less of the music. Not as big on the 50s as I am on the 60s, not as big on the 40s as I am on the 50s, and so on. There's lots of great blues and jazz in the 1900s, early 1900s, but I would say I'm not that big of a fan of music prior to like 1910. I'll give it an estimate around there, but it's kind of a touchy subject for me. I like to think I like all kinds of music from all eras. So that was a really roundabout way of saying my answer is the 2000s, if I had to pick one. So then you're asking for 5 psychedelic albums or 5 of my favorite genre. Punk is probably my favorite genre, or that kind of side of music, that side of rock. But I'm also a pretty big psychedelic fan, and that's probably my number 2 favorite genre currently anyways. I find the majority of records that I buy are either punk or psychedelic. So I've got 5 here. Some of them are more well known than others. I kind of have them in order of accessibility in a lot of ways. Really well known one here to start out with is the Byrds' Fifth Dimension. I want to say this is their 3rd record. And they got pretty psychedelic with it almost immediately. But you see here, mono, original pressing. Psychedelic records, because they're from the 60s, they tend to sound really fantastic in mono, as do most records of the decade in general. If there was a stereo pressing, then it tends to be rechanneled or done like after the fact, and not necessarily what the artist intended. I mean, perfect example is Pet Sounds, you know. I'm not going to get into it, but psychedelic music, you kind of want to go for mono pressings if available. But this album specifically, I think everybody knows the track 8 Miles High. There's also 5D, and Mr. Spaceman is, I hear all the time. 242 Foxtrot, the Learjet song, I think is kind of a hidden psych gem, or maybe a deeper cut from this record that I don't think gets enough recognition. But yeah, just a perfect psych album all the way through. This one you also probably know about as well. It's the Rolling Stones, Their Satanic Majesty's Request. I really love the imagery on this album, if nothing else. I know it's kind of a divisive record, and maybe a lot of people's least favorite Stones record, and probably where they were most obviously copying the Beatles. I think there's like a John Lennon quote saying how it got a little bit annoying there for a while because the Stones would basically do exactly what they did, but like 6 months later. Perfect example is After Sgt. Pepper. This came out a couple months later. So yeah, it's got some really good tracks on here. Everybody kind of mentions the track Citadel, which has a great kind of garage rock riff, but I'm also kind of fond of In Another Land, 2000 Man. Sing This All Together, I think has a good kind of vibe to it. the first and second part. Big hit off of here is She's a Rainbow, which is just, you can't really deny that that's just a great kind of pop psych track. There are a couple stinkers on here, like Gomper is kind of boring. On with the Show is kind of anticlimactic ending. But 2,000 Light Years from Home is really spacey and cool. And The Lantern, again, is just a great psychedelic track. So, yeah, I'm a fan of this record. Like I said, people are kind of divided about it, whether or not you love or hate it. But I think it's fantastic. Or, if not fantastic, then enjoyable enough. One here that I don't think gets talked about enough in general is Moby Grape's, I guess it's just self-titled record from, I want to say, 68, 67. Right in that psychedelic period. This one is not quite as out there as a lot of the other ones get. It's a little more straightforward. Just fantastic guitar work on here. That's Skip Davis there. Not Skip Davis, Skip Spence from Jefferson Airplane. He played drums for them. He plays guitar and sings on this one. Am I messing that up? No, that's Skip. Yeah, that's him right there. Plays guitar, sings. I think they have three guitar players and then drums and bass. Yeah, you can see a picture of them playing on the back there. All the songs, most of the songs are less than 3 minutes, and there's only 2 that are like just barely above 3 minutes. But there, you know, a lot of songs on here to fill it out. They're all good, and I think this is peak Moby Grape. And as you can see, this is not an original pressing, because on originals, this guy here has got his middle finger extended there, kind of sneaking that in, but really cool to have. I would really love an original. This one here is called The United States of America. I feel like I talked about this one before a couple times. This is mostly electronic, actually. There's synthesizers, all kinds of electric or electronic instruments, I should say, like electric drums and percussion, electric violin, ring modulator, electric harpsichord. So you notice there's no electric guitar. I mean, there's electric bass, and you can see him playing right there, but no electric guitar, and still a really fantastic psychedelic album. I think also they're noted to have been, when they played live shows, they would show up with sheet music to read off of as they would perform, which I think is really hilarious, and kind of a faux pas in the underground scenes at the time, probably, but still a really awesome band. I think this is their only record, if I'm not mistaken, which I could be and have been in the past. So yeah, as you can see, the cover's not in the best condition here, but still original pressing, stereo. I think this got a reissue for maybe Record Store Day Black Friday of last year, on like clear vinyl or something. So that's a thing, and these aren't too expensive. They're not the easiest to find, but definitely worth a listen. And one that I think is really out there is, I think, kind of categorized as folk psych. It's Pearls Before Swine, One Nation Underground. There's a couple different cover variations of this, but they all have the same painting on them, and it's all the same music. So yeah, but this is a stereo pressing. I forget what label this is even on. ESP disc, I'm pretty sure. You can see black labels there. This is definitely out there. It's got folk elements. There's some banjo on here. There's Morse code, which I forget what it spells out, something that they got in trouble for later. I think it might spell out LSD in Morse code. And the songs make no sense, and lots of times they go nowhere. but it's still, you know, that's kind of what I look for in psychedelic music, just completely spaced out, um, just experimental noise basically. Um, and you know, the instrumentation is always cool. Like I said, there's banjo on here, auto harp, vibraphone, mandolin, auto oscillator, whatever that is, swine horn, English horn, harpsichord. Um, they just get really out there with breaking up the traditional rock band instrumentation with guitars and drums. So yeah, those are some psychedelic albums that I highly recommend, obviously if they're in my collection. And the last one, which is a bonus, is to show a record with a cat on the front or back cover. And the one that I immediately thought of is the classic Carole King's Tapestry. These used to be in dollar bins everywhere, and it's a good record. It just sold a ton, and it's really common to find. And you still can find it for less than $5, but I don't really see it around me for $1 anymore. I guess people are catching on. But yeah, she's a great songwriter. She wrote for Dusty Springfield, at least on the Dusty in Memphis record, and probably tons of other people. But yeah, this is her singing and playing, and it's just a good record. So yeah, there's her cat. So that's all I got. Again, congrats on 500 subscribers. That's really awesome. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.